Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're actually going on a bit of a digital archaeological dig. We spend so much time talking about massive data sets, sprawling enterprise apps, and complex global networks. But right now, we're doing the exact opposite. We're zooming all the way in to investigate a single, fascinatingly tiny web page. We're going to look at the exact digital footprint of a microscopic artifact on GitHub and uncover the really peculiar story hiding right inside its metadata. Before we even get into the file itself, I want you to just pause and think about the absolute microscopic scale of 290 bytes. I mean, in an era of sprawling gigabyte repositories and these massive multi-layered web apps we use every day, finding a container holding this little information is incredibly rare. To intentionally store and track something this minuscule on a global platform raises an immediate question. What exactly is taking up this tiny speck of digital real estate? Okay, let's dive into this. This entire 290-byte file contains exactly 3 lines of code. That's it, 3 lines of code. It's kind of like a minimalist masterpiece of data, just sitting there quietly on the web. It's almost a ghost in the machine compared to the monolithic codebases we usually analyze. But to understand why it exists in the first place and why someone actually bothered to commit it, we have to trace its path backwards.
Section 1. The breadcrumbs. Tracking the file's location.
So to understand this tiny file, we really have to follow the digital breadcrumbs that lead us to its exact location on GitHub. We start right at the top level, step 1, which brings us to a user profile named Samrat P. Digging into that profile, step 2, takes us into a repository called Bits Wilp Cloud Computing. And right away the context starts to crystallize, doesn't it? Bits, Wilp, and cloud computing strongly suggest we're looking at some sort of academic or educational setting. Moving further down the directory tree, step 3 takes us deeper into a specific folder named Network Fundamentals for Cloud. And finally, step 4 reveals our target document, 0029 Dijkstra's Algorithm Pseudocode.md. So the crucial point here is that this isn't just random discarded data. It's a highly specific, sequentially numbered educational note about a classic networking algorithm, purposefully nestled deep within a course folder. It sets a very clear, deliberate academic stage for our artifact. Moving on to our next section, the metadata breakdown. Let's look at the forensic data. Now, what's really interesting about this is how precisely this moment in time is captured. We're looking at the exact forensic footprint this file leaves behind. The committer, as we saw, is Samrat P. The age of this commit? Exact 3 years ago. The file has 6 total lines of text, but only 3 lines of actual code. And the total size is perfectly measured at 290 bytes. It's completely frozen in amber. We have this 3-year-old commit preserving a microscopic amount of data down to the exact byte. It basically acts as a digital fossil from a specific cloud computing class, perfectly intact, documenting the exact second a student or teacher decided this specific algorithm snippet absolutely needed to be saved. And that brings us to the macro contrast, a tiny file in a massive ecosystem. And this brilliantly illustrates one of the most fascinating aspects of modern software platforms. Notice the extreme contrast here. On one side, we have the micro, our little educational fossil with its 6 lines of text, 3 lines of code, and just 290 bytes. On the other side, we have the macro environment it resides in. The platform surrounding this tiny file is absolutely loaded with multi-billion-dollar enterprise features. We're talking AI Copilot for code creation, DevSecOps solutions, enterprise-grade security add-ons, all framing a file that honestly barely registers on a hard drive. Let's take it a step further and see how this builds. Look at the heavy machinery operating literally just 1 click away from our 290-byte file. The navigation menu offers GitHub Actions to automate workflows, code spaces to spin up instant dev environments, issues to plan and track complex enterprise work, and advanced security to find and fix vulnerabilities. It's visually and conceptually staggering when you think about it. You have a global, industrial-scale AI-powered software delivery infrastructure wrapped entirely around a 3-line, 3-year-old markdown file about Dijkstra's algorithm. The sheer weight of the tools surrounding it makes the file itself feel even smaller. Which brings us to our final act, the missing pseudocode, a digital mystery. But as we analyze this source document, we have to address the giant elephant in the room. The file exists, the metadata from 3 years ago is flawlessly preserved. The massive GitHub infrastructure is beautifully documented all around it. But the 3 lines of pseudocode themselves, they remain hidden. In this specific digital scrape of the source page, the core content is simply not visible.
We're looking at the container, the metadata, and the massive ecosystem, but the repository's curtain is tightly drawn over the actual algorithm. It really highlights the fascinating and honestly sometimes frustrating nature of digital preservation. We can perfectly capture the shell, the history, and the surrounding environment of a file, while the core content inside remains entirely out of reach. It kind of makes you wonder how much of the web's history we're saving just the framing for, without keeping the actual picture.
Which brings us to the very bottom of the page's footer, where we find this beautifully literal, slightly humorous system message. You can't perform that action at this time. Now sure, it's a standard platform alert, but in the context of our digital archaeological dig, it feels quite profound, doesn't it? We know exactly where this 290-byte file lives. We tracked the breadcrumbs, we know who put it there 3 years ago, we know the massive infrastructure surrounding it. But when it comes to simply reading those 3 tiny lines of code, well, you can't perform that action at this time. And that leaves us with a provocative final thought. In our relentless quest to build massive digital archives and these endlessly complex enterprise platforms, are we sometimes prioritizing the preservation of the infrastructure over the simple, microscopic bits of human knowledge contained inside? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this investigation gave you a whole new perspective on the digital artifacts hiding right in plain sight.